hit the microphone first. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. We'll go ahead and get started. I've asked Commissioner Sprosty Burns to lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Commissioner Sprosty Burns. Appreciate that. She had made note that that was the first time she'd done that in 3 years, so we need to just make sure we ask her to do that a little more often. We'll excuse Commissioner Mann this evening, and then are we expecting Commissioner Mangum? Is that correct? Not sure. Okay, we'll hold that seat wide open for him. We now have time on the agenda for public input. This is a time for members of the public to express concerns, comments, questions, or issues that are not listed as part of the public hearing on the agenda. We ask if anyone making a comment limit those comments to 3 minutes and to state your name and your address clearly for the record. We'll open it up now for public input. See no members of the public that would like to make comment. We will note that each member of the Planning Commission received this note and an email from the concerned citizens of Saratoga Springs regarding some of the noise currently on the south end of town on Redwood Road. And as I read through this, I don't know if it's appropriate for staff or not as far as an action item, but I know a lot of times the noise abatement or noise walls, those are all, especially where Redwood Road is a UDOT road. I don't know if there's been any communication with UDOT regarding the noise levels on Redwood Road. Go ahead, Tibby.
I'm not aware of that being brought up to our code compliance department, but I can pass that along to them.
That would be great, thank you. It would be good to get an idea around the actual levels that we're hearing there if it's feasible. Thanks. Okay, we'll go ahead and close public input at this time. And we'll move now to item number 1 on our public hearings. This is the Wildflower Village Plan 8 located west of Mountain View Corridor and Wild Blossom Boulevard. BJ Ryan with Lennar Homes as the applicant.
All right, good evening, commissioners. This item is Wildflower Village Plan 8. This item is a legislative item that you'll make a recommendation to the City Council on for the area, this section of Wildflower outlined in red. Before we move any further, I just wanted to explain for a few minutes a little bit about our planned community zones. Last time we did this with Village 5, I think it's a little overwhelming, especially if you haven't seen one of these before. We have a lot of new planning commissioners, so I'll spend a couple minutes here just to explain how these work in the city. Chapter 19.26 of the City Code outlines the standards that we have for planned communities. This applies to all community plans, village plans, and our neighborhood plans have similar standards. We're also working on a code amendment to try to clean up and make this chapter clearer and to formally include neighborhood plans in this chapter. I just wanted to point out and explain that these types of communities, they are essentially master plan developments. They have a master development agreement that the city enters into with the developer, and the zoning is essentially determined by these documents. So you have a planned community plan document. This is for any property 500 acres or more that chooses to enter into this type of development. So the overarching document would be the community plan. And then for each segmented neighborhood or area that has been identified as part of the phasing in that community plan, those are identified as villages. Then they each have their own village plans with separate standards and theming and different amenities that we try to use to make these more cohesive developments. So instead of getting 50 10-acre subdivisions, we're getting one 500-acre plus neighborhood that kind of feels like a community. The purpose of these developments are to establish a desirable working environment, a unique identity and character, to have innovation and integration of uses, including residential, commercial, recreation, entertainment, office, and light industrial uses, to focus development patterns in a more cohesive way, to allow for a variety of uses that we'll see a mix of housing types, a mix of multifamily and single family in different areas that aren't typically allowed by our standard zones, to allow for a variety of use standards. So for our commercial areas, like our Smiths area is actually part of a commercial village and community plan. Our medical center, the University of Utah Medical Center, has their own plan to try to develop a similar cohesive development, even though it doesn't have residential, to allow for more safe pedestrian bicycle travel, to promote more trails and other types of uses that way, to provide a process for developers to kind of vary the capacity, intensity, and uses in a more flexible manner, but it's still overall the same thing that they would have been entitled to by the general plan otherwise. And that we have a coordinated long-term build-out area, even if it is owned by different developers, different owners, it still has a plan and a theme overall. We have definitions in the section of the code for what a community plan is and what a village plan is. The district area plan applies only to the property owned by SLR, Suburban Land Reserve, which is actually the biggest area. So they have a district area plan because it's so big. It's much bigger than a community plan. So then each section of the district area plan, it's not necessarily contiguous property. Like the area around the temple, Beacon Point, is part of that district area plan. Wander is a part of the district area plan, even though it has its own community and village plans. It's to try to connect everything together in a more cohesive way. And then this is what it looks like on our zoning map. So if somebody looks and sees PC, it's like, what is PC? We don't have standards for PC in our section 1904 of our code has a table of uses. It has a table of standards like setbacks, building heights, and that type of thing. The reason PC is not listed in our standard zoning requirements is because of those documents. So we approve our community plans and village plans that kind of dictate whether or not they're going to follow Title 19 City Code on those items, because they do allow for flexibility, or the code allows for flexibility if the applicant chooses to request that, and to vary from the code in certain ways, but in exchange for, enhanced amenities, enhanced whatever it may be that the city negotiates at the time of community plan with the master development agreement. So we have a lot of our city actually in the planned community zone, but this is exactly to try to bring together more cohesiveness as the city develops, because we're seeing these large 500 plus acre size developments. And then Wildflower, this application for business item 1 or public hearing item 1 that we see today, is the northwesternmost section of the city. So it's kind of a reverse L shape. We have the area along the northernmost part of Mountain View Corridor, that's a part of Wildflower, as well as the section that juts out to the left. And about 5 years ago now, this was combined into one. It was previously 2 separate master plan communities that was combined into one by DAI. And so we've seen a variety of villages come through for this community plan area. So right now, again, we're seeing Village Plan 8. This application by Lennar Homes matches the community plan. In fact, they're actually proposing less ERUs in this village than what they are allowed by the community plan. So they in this layout, they're proposing 168 single-family homes of a variety of sizes, and then 106 townhomes. As part of the community plan allowances, they have identified their own types of residential development. So you'll see type 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then type 5 is their commercial development. So 1, 2, and 3 are all single family. Type 1 is anything 5,000 square feet or greater. Type 2 is smaller than 5,000 square foot lots. And then type 3 is a taller, skinnier version of a small lot, kind of the detached townhome style, like with the shared driveway style development. So 3 different types of single family development, but overall they have 168 in this development. This continues on the development from Village 7 that is currently under construction now. So they'll have a few more townhomes there along Wild Blossom Boulevard. A handful of the first shared driveway type development, single-family homes on the south end there, that's directly to or closest to the Hadco mines in Eagle Mountain to the south. And then a lot more of our single-family homes here. And then I also wanted to point out the elevations. So the applicant has specified what types of elevations they want, but they are also proposing that to vary from city code. They, on the front, instead of having 3 different colors and 3 different materials, they have very specific color palettes that they will adhere to that look just like this. You'll see some of these that were built in Village 3 right along Mountain View Corridor and Wild Blossom Boulevard. And they don't look bad, they just don't meet that exact standard of the code. So they provided pictures to show what they're going to be building out there as well. So it's the same type of development that we've seen in Village 3. And with that, I'd like to turn this back over to the commission for any questions.
Thank you for an excellent presentation. Is the applicant here this evening?
Yes, BJ is here,
Would you like to add anything to the presentation?
if you wanted to.
We won't force you, but if you would like to, you certainly can. If you don't mind stating your name and address for the record, sir.
BJ Ryan, Lennar Homes, 5370 East Pioneer Fork Road, Salt Lake City, Utah. We're excited about the community. Again, we have reduced some of the townhomes in the area. This provides better flow throughout the community. It makes the property more functional and puts a little less pressure on us to do retaining walls or other things like that that tend to take away from some of the usability. So we're excited to be here, and we hope you're excited for the project and look forward to a positive response. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. You might have a couple questions from the commission, so if you'd like to sit, you're welcome to sit for just a moment. Thank you for that. I'll turn the time now over to members of the Planning Commission for any questions or comments. Commissioner Hill.
Tippy, again, thank you for that kind of pre-introduction, because I look and, you know, the community plan was February of 2015. It's an ongoing process. As you get closer to building, you want to refine what's going to work for you, and I understand that. 2 things that I see, and they both deal with traffic. I see your traffic study was a part of your presentation, and that was a very inclusive, plan that came to the city. But it said that, traffic, you gave indication as of 2023, and then it compared it to the traffic patterns of 2028. Is the 2028 the completed date? Is that why you went 2023 and 2028?
To be frank, I don't quite understand the dates on the traffic study.
Okay.
So I can't speak directly to that. But as far as the timeline for the community, in Village 7, 8, and it's about a 10-year build for us.
Okay. I just kind of read into that might be the completion date, so that's why they did that. The other question that I have deals with the start of the extension of Mountain View and coming up from Porter Rockaway Road and coming in. There's going to be more traffic going up Mountain View. We know that. What do you feel is the impact that's going to have using the corridor a lot more than it is presently being used?
I think when the time comes, you're obviously going to feel the increase in traffic. I agree with that, but I believe that DAI, the city, and Lennar have addressed that. I believe we already have some upsizing on the main boulevard.
Okay.
So I believe that's that handles that. In the traffic study, it does talk about a traffic light, and technically, I believe that traffic light, as far as managing traffic, isn't necessary for a bit. However, we are in the process of installing that traffic light now and the crosswalks. I really think the driver on that is safety for the kids getting to. We're out ahead of the traffic sign and safety issue. I have no doubt that down the road, when that road completes to Eagle Mountain, it will become very popular.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't affect the Village 8 per se inside the village, but it's the getting out onto the major thoroughfares. And we know that there are big plans at some point of all of that coming together, but I just wanted to get a little bit of a sense from that perspective. So thank you for sharing that input.
Sure.
That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill, for the good questions. Commissioner Kilgore.
On the village plan, on page 4-01, under type, it's the development standards and design guidelines. Under type 4, in the second paragraph, it says that, excuse me, the city code doesn't define parking space. The closest definition is for off-street parking. Talks about that. And then it says, we interpret this definition as a measurement of 5 feet from the foundation of a building to the space designated as parking of one vehicle, or measured from the foundation to the right-of-way line as designated in the street cross-section. And it goes on. So I was just wondering if the staff agrees with that interpretation and we're okay with that.
Yeah, so this was proposed with villages 2 and 7. Essentially, we don't allow parking in required setbacks, but they requested that exception. So that is a long-winded way of them asking for an exception where they'll still have parking setback from the structures, but they could potentially be in the full 10-foot, 15-foot setback, whatever that is, so that they could have more guest parking that is off-street.
Okay. If it's an exception, do we need to call it out just so that we know that we granted an exception, or we don't need to do that because it's already been granted before?
Oh, I believe it's already in the community plan as well, but they just that again here
Okay.
as an addition.
It's a restatement? Okay. All right, so we don't need to make any conditions or anything like that? Okay. Well, that's it for me then. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. Any other questions or comments from members of the commission? Commissioner Sprosty Burns?
Yeah, so I was just trying to look at the master plan the community plan. And with this open space, does this open space that's on the bottom of the screen, does it line up with somewhere else in the development?
Yes, so this is kind of common. This also happens in Mount Saratoga, where each village needs to meet the 30% open space requirement on its own. So sometimes they'll split up or stretch out the open space in a contiguous manner, but it kind of is further from the homes so that they can claim the 30%, for lack of a better word. So that triangle on the bottom right that you see, they have the trail corridor kind of going west of the homes, but also east, and it leads and ends in that little square of the dog park. So they have a dog park currently under review for site plan in Village 7. So this will be built before they get any approvals in Village 8. So we're okay with the way that was phased out for open space, since that would be constructed ahead of Village 8 and all the other open space before they get to the south side of Village 8.
Okay.
Yeah, a part of the planned community standards, they just differ from our standard amenity points and open space percentage calculations that we have in our code, because the section of code was a little bit older than the system that we have now. We do recommend that they adopt an amenity point system, which Wildflower has done, but they still just have a 30% overall open space standard, regardless of whether that's a detention basin or a trail corridor, and it's a little bit different than we calculate in other subdivisions.
so that it connects to the dog park eventually, but that long line across the bottom doesn't really ever connect to anything.
It's a trail, so in the overall wildflower project, it's a trail that connects to the native open space on the west and north and the steeper parts of the development that are also kind of a buffer to Camp Williams. And so we have a trail corridor that surrounds this whole, what used to be called the Springs, this 1,700 acre section, or this 700 acre section of wildflower. So that trail corridor follows, there's actually an open ditch, I believe, on that south side. So this is kind of along the north side of that ditch to try to maintain that natural open space area, but also provide access and trails. So that will go all the way across the south. There's a city water tank that is all the way on the west side up on the mountains if you've driven out there. And there's a trail that goes up and around there, and then it continues on all the way around toward the cemetery property and back down.
Okay. Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Spasti Burns. Any other questions or comments from members of the commission this evening? Hearing none, I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
Oh, there's a public
Oh,
hearing.
sorry, this is a matter, thank you. This is a matter of public hearing, so this item is now open for comment from the public. Hearing no public comment, we'll go ahead and close public comment on this item. And now I would be happy to entertain a motion from the commission. Commissioner Kilgore.
I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for Wildflower Village Plan 8, located at approximately west of Mountain View Corridor and Wild Blossom Boulevard, based on the following findings and subject to the conditions in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any additional discussion on the matter? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move to item number 2 under public hearings this evening. This is the Jacob Ranch Marketplace rezone from residential single-family to regional commercial, general plan amendment land use map from low-density residential to commercial, and accompanying concept plan located at approximately 1900 South Redwood Road. Bill Gaskell as the applicant, and Austin, looks like you might have the presentation for us.
That's correct. Thank you. Okay, so as this has been introduced, this is they're calling this the Jacobs Ranch Marketplace. It's just off of Redwood Road. You can see the location here. So this is north of Ring Road, across the street from the golf course. It's there again. To clarify this, what they're requesting is to change a portion. So you'll see that's a concept plan on the map there. They're requesting to change 14 acres, approximately 14 acres, to from low-density residential to regional commercial as the land use, and then the zoning would change from R110 to regional commercial. So the concept plan that you see there is approximately 28 acres. About half of that is what they would be proposing to rezone. The other half is already regional commercial. And you can see that in this diagram here. So the orange is the portion that they're requesting the rezone for. The red is already zoned commercial. On the site, they're proposing 16 lots, which range in size from 5.7 acres to 0.93 acres. Among the different uses that would be proposed in this project are retail, restaurant, grocery, hardware, financial, office, and fuel station. This is a concept that they've submitted. You can see the layout here, where the buildings are. They've shown a concept that meets our code as far as parking and landscaping requirements. The green lines that you see there, that's pedestrian connectivity. So they're showing that if you were on foot, you could get around on the site. And then they provided a conceptual elevation for one of the buildings. more of the, as they go, as this would move forward, you know, went to a site plan, they would provide further details on the buildings. But at this point, it's just a concept that they're showing here. Let's see. And then, you know, this just kind of shows some of the differences. Obviously, it's just basically going from single-family 10,000 square foot lots to a regional commercial product zone. The regional commercial zone is, it allows most of our uses. As far as when you think of commercial, that's the zone you probably think of when you think of that. And so this is a public hearing, and I think that's all I have, unless you have any questions or.
Thank you for the presentation. Is the applicant here this evening? Would you state your name and address for the record, sir? And if you'd like to add anything to the presentation, that would be great.
My name is Dan Ford.
You can sit down if you'd like.
My name is Dan Ford. I am not the applicant, but I represent the owners, the Jacob family. The Gascos just texted me. They're in traffic and they're very close.
That never happens here.
So about 5 minutes ago, they said they're 10 minutes out. If you want to do the public hearing, I think they'll probably be back by then if you'd like to do that first. Or I could probably answer some questions, but I prefer them to do it if that's
Okay.
possible.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the transparency. We appreciate that. This is a matter of public hearing, so we will be happy to hear from members of the public at this time. If there are public comments, we would welcome you to make those. Please state your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less.
Oh, I'll definitely be on the less side of that. I'm Aaron Jacob, address 2787 South Spring Meadow Drive in Saratoga. So I actually live right next to this development, probably 3 minutes away from the proposal, and would voice certainly support for this. I think it's very much needed to have simple grocery services in South Saratoga. It's quite interesting. I had my wife share a Facebook post with me just the other day when this came out, and somebody had said, hey, we need to have some grocery services in South Saratoga. And I think within a matter of about 24 hours, there were over 120 comments on it, largely in support. I actually don't know a single negative comment that flowed onto that page. When I think about it, some of the challenges that we face in South Saratoga, driving that many times every day and on that, the traffic is pretty bad, as has been noted already. I think having services down there, commercial, services available, helps alleviate some of the traffic that we experience around the Smith's Marketplace today, both for those that are not having to travel 15, 20 minutes from the south end of Saratoga, having something more accessible to them, but also those that kind of split the difference between this proposed development, being able to go south to get their groceries rather than assist and contribute to the congestion that happens today around existing grocery services. Another thing that I think about as a father of four myself, I think about what are the employment opportunities for children and youth in the area. I think that's a very positive thing for the community. I think it breeds a better sense of community for South Saratoga, along with just further economic development. It's clear that the city will continue to grow. And there's room down there, and in order to support that growth, there needs to be amenities that are available to the community.
Thank you, Mr. Jacob. Appreciate your comment. Would any other members of the public like to make comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment and open this up for members of the commission for questions. You're going to be the guy for now, Austin, if you're okay for that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Commissioner Hill.
Thank you, Chair. Austin, a couple of questions that I have. Number one, there is going to be I don't know if it's a regional commercial in the Ring Road in the circle, correct? We talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Ring Road, so this diagram here is not 100% accurate, but what you see there in the purple, that's the inside of the ring. That's neighborhood commercial. The reason why this is not accurate is we do have the fire station on the south end there, on the south, or no, I'm sorry, not the south, the east side. This image is north is to the right, but a portion of that is kind of civic space, so city owned the fire station there. which is going to have an expansion going on it. But the inside of that is neighborhood commercial, which is a less intense type of commercial than regional commercial.
Okay, I just wanted to bring that back to everyone's attention because we looked at that maybe 3 months ago. This is, how do I put this? This is a proposed zone change. And so the things that we have now are conceptual, correct? And that's why we have so much can be compliant, because we're very early in the stage. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So in the staff report, there are a lot of can complies. And so we don't expect them to have all of those as complies at this stage, but as they come forward with the preliminary and site plan, they would have to meet all of those.
And thus, that's why everything said can comply, so it looks like it can come where it needs to be. You know, as we look at the community plan, I think the desire is to have these bigger parcels where we're able to bring services to the people as compared to the people going to the services. That just adds to congestion. And initially, I looked at this and I go, oh, all these can comply but aren't complying right now. And then as I read further, it made me feel a little better that in reality, what we need to be doing is bringing services out. And this seems like a absolutely great place for that to be, and looking at the conceptual plan that talks a little bit about the types of services, groceries being one, because you head down Redwood and you're just in gridlock, and that's going to be gridlock for a long time. I'd hate to live out south and have to come in and do my grocery shopping. I'd do it early in the morning, late at night, but not during the peak time of the day. So those are the few things that hit me initially, and you've answered the question. So thank you, and Chair, those were my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. Appreciate your questions and comments. We will now go to Commissioner Wilden.
Yeah, thank you very much. The request of course, is for regional commercial. And just was wondering why the request, if you have any idea why it wasn't neighborhood commercial.
Yeah, I think the main reason is, so you'll see the portion there that's already in red, that's already regional commercial.
Yeah.
And so the applicant felt like to make this a viable site for the grocer, they would have to surround it with appropriate businesses to make it a successful economic center. And so to do that, they felt like regional commercial was the best fit to fulfill those requirements.
So, you know, for neighborhood commercial, what type of things would not be able to build with neighborhood commercial that regional could allow based on their proposed plan here?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the neighborhood commercial, you wouldn't be able to do a grocer, you wouldn't be able to do the hardware store. Also, the grocer would have a fuel station that's associated with it, related to it. So that wouldn't also not be allowed there. I'm trying to think of, I believe they also have a financial institution like a bank or credit union, which I don't believe is allowed in the neighborhood commercial either.
So with some reorganization, they could probably get everything if this was neighborhood instead of regional. Is that possible?
Would it be possible if that was neighborhood commercial? I'd have to look. Let's see.
Tippy, is there a chance
a good
you could pull up
question.
that chart?
We could pull up the chart maybe.
The difference.
Because some of the other businesses, I'm going through my list here. So we have retail, we have restaurants. I don't know. We'll look at the table and see if restaurants are allowed. That's one I'm not sure about. And then office space as well. Let's see. So let's look and see restaurants.
We're trying to find all the distinctions between neighborhood commercial and regional commercial, if I understand Commissioner correctly, and what may or may not be allowed in one versus the other.
Thank you.
It's also very small right now, but it's okay. If you can see it, then we trust you.
Neighborhood commercial is the first, communities is second. So restaurant.
Regional is the third, right? So we're comparing neighborhood.
Oh, sorry.
First column is the third
Yeah.
column.
Yeah.
Can you just go a little slower?
I mean, maybe as an exercise, we might want to just scroll through this from the top to the bottom really slowly so we can kind of just peruse it.
The biggest one is no grocers and no offices in neighborhood commercial.
The offices would be the big thing that they would be eliminated from creating.
And the grocer, I believe.
Yeah, the offices, grocer, those are probably the biggest ones. So, you know, is there a possible configuration where you could have some neighborhood commercial and regional? I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for the applicant, but that you can see what uses would and wouldn't work.
Okay, thank you.
I think also, Commissioner Wilden, this is a great exercise you're having us go through as well. The other ones that stood out to me, and which Austin mentioned, was the hardware store, which we see right there. And then also automotive repair would be able to come in under regional versus neighborhood.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about what is allowed as it gets closer to the neighborhood there.
Yeah.
And that was just my concern, because they already have the regional commercial zoned. So that's why I was asking if this could be neighborhood commercial instead, which would have less of an impact on the neighbors for some of the things that may not be desirable that are allowed in regional commercial. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Wilden. Do you have any other questions or comments from members of the commission?
Chair, I just remembered that we had an email come in, public comment, that I believe Wendy printed off, so maybe we
Okay.
would, I don't know if we want to read that into the record, or what's the protocol on that?
We would like to do that, yes,
Yeah.
for sure. So let's finish up just momentarily. Any other questions or comments right now? We'll do Commissioner Sprosty Burns, and then we'll come back and circle back to public comment.
So we had an application a while back for, out by Ring Road, it was a rezone. Is this the same applicant?
No, this is a different applicant and a different property.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah, this, Bill Gaskell, the applicant, he's done some development here in town, so he actually did the Walmart site. That was one that he did that was also regional commercial.
20 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. Okay, so does this property line up and touch anywhere where that applicant came in last time?
Yeah, let's go back to that. Oops. Let's go to the one that shows.
The one with the color-coded zones.
Yeah, that one.
Informative.
That one,
Yes.
there we go.
Because if I remember right, one of the issues was that we talked a lot about that phasing from regional to neighborhood to, and that was a big sticking point to houses of why we didn't want to make that change at that point. And it looks like if it touches there, right, then we would be essentially approving for this, but not for that. So this is when precedent becomes.
Yeah, there's a couple of things to point out here. So you can see that the purple there kind of is sandwiched in between to the west and the red to the east. on the right-hand side of the screen here, you see the yellow that's adjacent to the red. Right where that boundary is, there's a significant grade change. So basically, any future development of residential would have to be some distance up that, basically it's a hill right there. So it'd have to be kind of up the hill from the commercial. So there's kind of I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a bit of a natural barrier buffer between the two zones, even though they show as being adjacent to one another. And that would be on the west side, which would be the top of this screen here, which I'm talking about.
But it still doesn't meet the code that, or that phasing.
The phasing,
Yeah. The
I'm
feathering.
not sure I understand.
Yeah.
Part of what we strive to do, it's in the packet as well, is like gradually phase into different zones from one another, and I believe that's your point, Commissioner
Yes.
Foster Burns. I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but the concern being that we jump automatically from regional commercial to R110.
Yeah.
We recently had that applicant come in that was not this piece of property, but an adjacent piece of property that is zoned to R110, and that was the discussion we had, because that one, as it stands, butts up against existing homes already, if that's what makes sense.
Yeah.
If we go further west
No,
up
I
from both
understand.
of those zones. And you
Yeah.
can kind of see where that line of housing starts coming into that little top corner right there. So that was the previous discussion we had. And so I think your concern, Commissioner Foster Burns, is that there we determined that that wasn't a good idea, but here we're considering it. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean,
And that's a fair concern.
we've got to, like, if we're going to hold this other property owner to this and set precedent that we're going to hold to things, then it's fair is fair, right? But also, you know, if this owner had come in first and applied, then the second owner would have, what they were asking for, we could have actually approved. So and also, words are not working.
Oh, well, hold on one sec, Commissioner Hill, if you don't.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and turn my time over on that. Thank
Okay,
you.
we'll go to Commissioner Kilgore, and then Commissioner Hill, if you'd like to comment, we'll get to you.
Yeah, I think that's actually a very good point. But in my memory is so bad. I thought that the way the other application came in, where the regional, it was practically where the regional commercial and neighborhood, I thought almost shared streets even. Now, I know we do have a shared street here, you know, that the eastern one, I guess. But it does, as Austin brought up, planner Austin brought up, is that it is more like a barrier type of street as opposed to like a shared street where you're actually going from one region right into the next region. And so I could see why this makes a little bit more sense, but I do agree that we have to make consideration for those issues that we did bring up last time. I do see this as more natural, let's just say, than the other one.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. Commissioner Hill, didn't mean to cut you off, but please, if you'd like to make a comment?
Yes, just my memory serves me a little bit that we were really concerned of the kinds of services that were going to be there. We were looking at a athletic facility that we felt that might not be able to handle all the parking. And, you know, as we look at this regional commercial, there's so much more services that are going helping those living in the area as compared to that very specific thing that we were looking at. If I'm not mistaken, it was some type of athletic, it might have been soccer or whatever it might be. And we had a lot of concern about that because it was so specific that it wasn't going to serve the neighborhood, and there were a lot of neighbors that came in and said, we've got to park across the street, we don't even have parking for that. So that was my recollection, that was the big concern we had there, was the type of services that were coming in. So I just wanted to share, if my memory was right, that was a lot of our discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. Commissioner Sprosty Burns.
Yeah, I recall this as well, and I do want to just state, I'm not opposed to this idea overall, and I see some great points about putting some infrastructure where the people already are. And part of that idea is that we have this plan that we lay out and try and make that work, right? And so then if we just go in and change it because, oh, this one, we like this one better than that one. I remember the residents were upset about some residents were upset about the parking, but that was not a reason, that was not the reason why I voted the way I voted. I voted for the zoning. I think that, so if we made this zone change, could that first applicant come back and at that point, and would the feathering work at that point?
Yeah, so I mean, the other applicant for the other property, he's welcome to, he could reapply if he wanted to. That's his right. He does have that right.
So if we allowed that or if they did apply for another rezone, would the feathering requirement fit at that point if we made this change?
We're all trying to dig deep into the memory bank, and if I remember correctly, I believe that the owner was in the actual neighborhood commercial zone, that they were looking to change that over, if I remember correctly, as part of that purple area there.
Yeah, they wanted to change the purple to red, essentially, in the middle of Ring Road Circle. And so, I think a lot of the vocal concern from the citizens, from the residents, came from that area up on top of the circle there. It was that neighborhood up above there that was concerned about it. So even if this were to be approved and developed, I don't know if it changes that other site that much. It's still the same proximity to those residents that doesn't change.
Does that help you?
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry. Sorry. Sometimes I forget that you guys are waiting for me to say that, and then I just start thinking. Thank you.
Thank you for great questions and comments. Commissioner Kilgore, we'll go to you next.
What's east, what's the zoning for everything that's east of the road?
East of the road? That's the golf course, but it's actually zoned residential, R110.
I'm going the wrong direction.
East is Talon's Cove, and then west is...
Well, okay, I thought this was north.
North is that way.
On this map, north is on the top, but on this one, it's like we rotated it.
Below, that's all Talon's Cove, so that's already developed, and that's a golf course then.
Correct, yeah.
Is there a light?
Do you have anything else, Commissioner Kilgore?
I don't think so.
Is there a light at Ring Road?
Yes, there is.
Yeah, yeah. And one more thing to point out, I guess. So on the north end of this, you can see how the concept goes up to the top there. There's a planned light at that what would be an intersection right there. So that's part of the UDOT plans, is to have a light there.
Okay.
You're saying north on Redwood Road?
On the northern part of this proposal, which would be right-hand side of this.
All the way there.
The far right of that, on that orange segment, right there would be an access point onto Redwood through a lighted intersection.
It's actually very valid. Okay.
Yeah, that kind of changes it a little.
Commissioner Wilden.
So I just want to clarify, so just to above, which would be west on this, which would be the top of this, because of the geography, because of the surroundings, there's just probably very unlikely that they're going to have homes behind that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I wish I could point to the screen, but like where you see that black line just above the red and the orange, if you can move the mouse kind of up a little bit, that black line right there.
Yeah.
So there's actually a power line corridor that runs through there, and there's also the topography. It's much higher elevation than the commercial area. So you'd have those two buffers, the power lines plus the grade change. You wouldn't really be able to build. Maybe it could be backyards, but it'd be challenging to build it right adjacent to that property line.
So typically, we'd want to feather it, and I appreciate you bringing that up, but in this situation, because there's no one behind it, it's not going to make that much of a difference. Is that what you're probably saying?
Yeah, I would say yes.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Commissioner Wilden. I have a few thoughts on this as well that I'd like to share. I typically try not to talk too much about these things and let the commission work through them. But, so I live a half a mile here as the crow flies from this proposal. And I think the things, some of the public comment we've heard already, being a South Ender, it is becoming increasingly more difficult to get to services and more frustrating to get to services. So I think that's an incredible pro to considering this change, is that there's a strong possibility that we take a large portion, even where, there's a lot of build out still to remain in the south end of the city, and thinking that, I think it also serves future citizens. That's the hardest thing we try to do here, is gaze into that crystal ball and decide timing and population growth. And those are incredibly difficult to understand. But what we do have now is an existing option before us. For me, the thing that sways my opinion on this is we already have regional commercial sitting right there. And when we run the distinction between regional commercial and neighborhood commercial, in my mind, they're pretty arbitrary distinctions. I mean, if we're talking about a hardware store and a grocery store, I want those things. And I understand why we have the difference between the two, but for this application, it seems to me that it's almost a moot point with a regional commercial already sitting there. And regardless of the action that we take tonight, we're going to run into the problem that is already there with the R110, with the regional commercial currently sitting there. And that's a thing that we're going to have to address at some future point. I think we've had a lot of discussions from the Planning Commission of late of how we can help mitigate some of those things as our city grows and zones start butting up into one another, and things that we can ask for developers to do to help mitigate as those zones come up to each other. And I think that remains a future option for us as well, should homes come into this location that's up to the west of this. As you'd mentioned, there'll be grading and slope changes and a lot of other things that will have to take place. And I forgot about the power line corridor, and that's a very valid comment, because there's some pretty serious power lines going through right there as well. So for me, I think it's a win for the south end of the city. I think it's a win for the development itself if it helps bring those services closer to our citizens. Saves on gas, saves on time, saves on frustration and road rage and all those other fun things that take place, because we're all stuck on Redwood Road every day. I'll be quiet, and Ken, we have you. If you'd like to give us a few comments, we would certainly welcome that.
Yes, just wanted to add.
Sorry, I meant Ken over there.
Oh, sorry, there are two Kens here.
Yeah.
Well, actually, there are three. We've got our engineer. I think we are Ken F. So. Just wanted to mention that beyond actual uses in the differences between neighborhood commercial and regional commercial, there are a few other differences as far as actual square footage size on buildings that would be allowed, but just as a note.
That's a great point. Thank you for reminding me of that as well. Okay, now we'll go to Commissioner Kilgore.
Yeah, and then I think the thing that changes, so it was a really good point that Commissioner Strassi-Burns brought up about the other application that we had. And I think the main difference for me in this case is the fact that there's a Talons Cove to the east, and it will always be there. So there will never be homes there. It already just acts as as a buffer, in that there will never be more traffic at that section, that area, and it's just an open green space. I also live just half a mile east of that area, and so you'll just always have nice open space, even though it's artificial turf. It's artificially maintained, but it's still just a nice open space. So I think that's really the big thing that makes it different, plus the Redwood Road divider, than the other application. I think that, at least in my mind. So that's why I am in favor of the request.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. We do need to get to the matter of public comment. Any other additional comments at this time from the members of the commission? Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and reopen the public comment. And Wendy, if you'd like to read that in.
Okay. So the comment is from Sandra Steele, and she called Sarah and spoke with her about accessibility access from Redwood Road because she is in a mobility scooter. After that, she sent this email. Dear Sarah, I have included as many of the scoping advisories and ADA codes as I can find. Since I use a mobility scooter, I personally do not want to have to access this center by a vehicular way. I sit low to the ground, and even though the scooter is red, I am hard to see in a vehicular for access. I hope this explains my interest. I am totally in support for this development, and it will, for me, provide independence for hopefully years to come. And then she sent several pages of ADA codes. And those will be in the record.
Thank you. Thanks for reading that in, and that's a well-noted comment, and I'll make note as well. The nice part is that along this area as well, there is an existing trail that's in place that the city recently put in on the west side, and in addition to the east side, there's trails on both sides now of Redwood Road in this area. Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment at this time. And I'd be happy to entertain a motion from members of the commission unless there's further discussion.
I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation for approval of the requested rezone and general plan amendment for Jacobs Ranch Marketplace located at approximately 1900 South Redwood Road with the findings and conditions in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Weldon. We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Hill, I have you on the mic. Did you have a comment? Did you want to make?
No.
Okay. Do we have any other additional discussion on the matter? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we're now on to item number 3 of our public hearing. This is amendments to Title 19 Land Development Code of the City of Saratoga Springs, Chapter 1906, Landscaping and Fencing. The proposed change would add requirements applicable to all retaining walls constructed within the city regardless of city initiated. Tippy will be presenting for us.
Yes, this code amendment, I will just say that David Jellin also worked really hard with me on this, so he's not here today. So I just wanted to give him some credit. This is a city-initiated code amendment to clarify our fencing code in relation to retaining walls and fence height. The way that it was currently written, the maximum height of a fence was embedded into the section on retaining walls, so we separated that and just labeled it height. I think that was just an oversight, but just in case, that makes it clearer. But we also wanted to make sure that our retaining wall standards were clear and applied to all retaining walls throughout the city. We were currently or previously using a code in section 1910. 1910. So our fencing code is in 1906. We were previously using a standard in section 1910 for standards on terracing and retaining walls. However, 1910 only applies to steep slopes in the city, 15% or greater. So technically, this wouldn't apply to just any retaining wall. So we wanted to clarify that and identify here that all retaining walls shall follow those standards regardless of slope. So we didn't want to duplicate standards and have them in two places, but we just added this clarification here.
Excellent. Thank you for the presentation. This is a matter of public hearing, and we'll open this up at this time for any public comment on this. Hearing none from members of the public, we'll go ahead and close public comment and open this up for comment and questions from members of the commission. Commissioner Hill.
Tippy, did I hear you correctly? The difference between 1910 and 1906, 6 deals with retaining walls that face the street and the side streets?
It deals with fencing. So any type of fencing, so any retaining walls adjacent to fencing or in landscaping.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then did I hear you correctly? Right now, that is limited to, will be limited to 3 feet, correct?
Retaining walls, you'll need a building permit if it's 4 feet or higher.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify, because on big slopes, I know they're able to do rock retaining walls up to 4 feet. Anything above that requires an engineer's report, is that correct?
Yeah, that is also separate from Title 19, our land development code. So that's just our building permit standard.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Commissioner Hill. Great clarifying questions. Commissioner Kilgore.
Okay, so I might be in the wrong section, so maybe this doesn't apply. There's because it's not, I always read from the big, huge packet, and so the pages are off. And that one, can't tell, there's a staff report, or there's a report, and it's from the Daniel McRae, from the Assistant City Engineer.
Oh, that's the next item.
That's for the next one, right?
So
Okay.
it's just before that.
Fine, I have nothing. Thank you.
I like your ambition. It's good. Okay, Commissioner Wilden.
This would just help me understand this better. What would this eliminate? What are we trying to not have happen in the city?
Yeah, so we have standards for retaining walls in our hillside ordinance 1910 that says if it's taller than 10 feet, you have to step the retaining walls. So we're trying to avoid, 30 feet tall retaining walls like we see, in Lehigh on Redwood Road.
So currently, they could do the 30-foot, but this limits them to 10.
Technically, I think we have been referencing these standards, but these technically, if they push back, did not apply. So we wanted to clarify that in the code.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Wilden. Any other questions or comments from members of the commission regarding this matter? If not, I would be happy to entertain a motion.
I'll go ahead. I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation for approval of the proposed code amendment to Title 19 with the findings conditioned in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilden. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any additional discussion on the matter? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously as well. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to item number 4 under the public hearing. Oh, I did not have public hearing on that. Let's redo. Did I? All right, it's all a blur. Apologies. Speaking of Towns Cove, I was out there this afternoon, so I might have sunstroke or something going on. All right, apologies for that. We're on now officially to item number 4, updates to standards and technical specifications and drawings for a manual for the city of Saratoga Springs. This city initiated. Dan, are you presenting on this? Excellent.
All right, good evening, Planning Commission. So this item is updates to the engineering standard specifications and drawings. Engineering department and the Public Works department, throughout the year, as we're doing reviews, we're out in the field, we're making notes of inconsistencies, changes, just clarifications we can make to make things better. So we keep a running list of these items. We don't always bring it before you every year. You'll notice there's a lot there. This is a few years worth of those changes. We've compiled them. There's a lot. Some of the largest items, some of the key items that we're changing were listed as the highlights. Local roads. Right now, we are at 29 feet of asphalt, so we're upping that 3 more feet to 32. That comes about because of legislation that has passed recently that put a maximum of the local road width at 32. We were actually below that. That was, I think, intending to push it down for some cities. We're below that, and so there's been comments that we'd like to at least be at that 32 feet of width. That also increases the right-of-way the same 3 feet. So we were at 59, now we're at 62. Another item that I think is notable is we're adding an empty conduit bank on the south and west side, so on one side of every public road as new development happens. That's for fiber to go in the future. We're defining half-width roadways. That comes up a lot, it can come up as we're doing development reviews, that someone will border an existing road out, and it's not super clear what their responsibilities are as far as developing, and so we've clarified that. Another neat one is in the storm drain section. It has a flow chart now, best management practices for LID. So currently, I mean, what this will do, some developments can't infiltrate in the city. The soils don't, we don't have much percolation, or we're out in kind of the floodplain area by the river. So this will help them have a flow chart of other ideas that how they can incorporate LID even if they have poor infiltration rates on their project. We've had issues with in design of storm drain detention basins and retention basins and how they calculate the volume. So we're clarifying those standards so that we don't run into. Ultimately, some of this stuff will help applicants move through the review process faster, because when there's inconsistencies or they find maybe loopholes or things, it just adds time. And so I think this is one that will help with that. Some other standards with thrust restraints on water lines. Currently, we use concrete thrust blocks everywhere. So now we're changing that to have alternative thrust restraints when the line is crossing under pavement. We're giving them some options there. Currently, our Public Works Department, we have a guy who has to get tests, sample water tests of drinking water throughout the city for reports. We don't have enough sampling stations for him, so sometimes he's having to go to residences and ask to get a sample from the faucet. So we're clarifying, we have new standard drawings that show one of those sampling stations is required in every residential development and every 100 homes. So if we have these giant developments, we'll have a bunch of these. Our public works inspectors, sometimes in the areas like up in Mount Saratoga, we have problems with native landscaping and how to know have they done enough to satisfy what the city requires for native landscaping. And so we've rewritten the specification on that and hydro seeding. There are other changes, as you know, in there. I think these are some of the larger ones. I'd add, we want the standards and specs to be as clean as possible. We go through a lot of effort to do that. Grammar, text changes, those things, we want those. I do think maybe if you want, you could talk to me after if you have those kind of things. We might be able to use time better for other types of items. Either way, it works, but I do want grammar and text and punctuation to be as good as possible. Sure, that's important to us. Anyway, with that, I turn it back to the Planning Commission.
Thanks. Well done. We appreciate the presentation and the summary of the changes that are being proposed. I'll open this up for public comment at this time. This is a matter of public hearing. For any members of the public that would like to make comment on this? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment at this time and open this up to the commission for comments and questions. Commissioner Wilden.
Yeah, just had a question on the air vacuum relief valve. Could you explain that?
Yeah, so on the air vac relief valves, from what I remember, so a lot of these standards get proposed by Public Works and Engineering, but what we've added is several standard drawings to show where they go in the park strip, and not just the park strip, but what type of road. So if we have a private road, where do they go on that? It hasn't been clear. If it's a public road, where does it go? Where in the park strip does it go? So air vac relief valves. So if you picture a crest curve on a roadway and we're trying to get that pipeline from one side to the other, and there's a high point, we need an air vac relief at that high point to let the air out, just for the hydraulic, keep everything working well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Commissioner Wilden. Any other questions or comments? No. Commissioner Kilgore.
So on the, I don't know, it's not numbered, so I'm not sure. It's at the very beginning of the big packet, but it's, you are the author of it. It's revisions to the city standard specifications. And then it has a bunch of bullets. And on the sixth bullet, it says, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The storm drain specification clarifies that detention/retention basins must be sized for the volume that is required to be retained in addition to the volume that is required to be detained. Could you explain what that means?
Sure. So when these developments come in, they need to do an infiltration feasibility study. So if the soils allow it, if we get the rates of drainage through the soils, they're required to retain 0.4 inches of precipitation on site. So not send it down the storm drain. We're trying to keep the water where it falls with that. And that comes from the state. But that, what has been happening sometimes is it wasn't clear in our standards. So what they would sometimes do is, so that's a volume, right? We have 0.4 inches falling over the area. We get a volume. In addition to that, they have a detention volume that they need to, for the 100-year storm. So that's a separate category. What we were finding is, as some of these engineers, and I don't think they're trying to do anything, they're just putting together, when we calculate the volume for the detention basin, it has an orifice and we release a certain amount of water out of that orifice, and it's usually, we could say 0.2 CFS per acre. What they were doing is they were taking the retention release, like what's percolating into the ground, and maybe say that's 0.05 CFS per acre or something. And they're adding it to the other one, 0.2 CFS, and they're saying, and then, so they're having two releases when we're saying, no, you can't combine those. It's separate. We just retain the volume, calculate your values for retention, calculate your values for detention. If you are combining that into one detention pond, they need to add on top of it. You cannot, does that make sense?
Yeah.
We were having, it wasn't super clear before, even though that's what our intent was. It got brought out that wasn't clear, and so we're clarifying. It's really spelled out clearly now.
So by, once this is adopted, then those detention and retention ponds that don't meet a specification, do they have to be redone? I mean, I know there's grandfathering, but the point about all this is that we don't have floods and we don't have, so if it doesn't meet code, then shouldn't they be looked at? Because otherwise they can cause problems, right, in the future.
The good thing is that the retention, it's not flood control. It has nothing to do.
Oh, okay.
So we've still, and we always will be, our flood controls with the 100-year storms, detention basins, and how we size the pipes and the detention part. The retention isn't part of that.
Okay.
It's not part of flood control. So we're still good on flood control. And we may have to update other things on detention in the future. We know we are in the process right now of going through some studies and stuff with global warming, how that affects precip, and we're looking into that. There may be changes in the future on things that affect flood control a little more.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's it for me.
Thanks, Commissioner Kilgore. Any other questions or comments from members of the commission? Otherwise, I would be happy to entertain a motion.
I'll go ahead. I move to forward a positive recommendation to the city council regarding these proposed revisions to the city's standard specifications.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Sprosty Burns. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any additional discussion on the matter? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now going to move on to our business items. And item number 1 under business is Jack in the Box site plan located at 1303 North Redwood Road. Karen Wallace and Sherry Miller, with Magellan Architects are the applicants. Austin, you're presenting?
Yes. Maybe if the microphone will work. Gina Grand Prix, our senior planner, couldn't be here tonight, so I'll be presenting this for her. This is the Jack in the Box site plan. It's located on Redwood Road here, 1303 North. You can see the site plan layout here. The parking does meet our requirements, as well as the drive-through requirements also meet our code. Here's a image of the landscaping, which also meets our code requirements. And then they've also provided some elevations, and these meet the architectural requirements as outlined in our code. It's really pretty cut and dry. We don't have any concerns with this one. There is one item in the checklist that was a can comply, which was they need to add some additional evergreens to buffer the parking. So I would recommend that the Planning Commission add that as a condition to the motion.
Thanks. Any additional thing for the presentation that you'd like to add?
I believe, let me just check my notes here. I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Is the applicant present this evening? Would you like to come up and add anything to the present? I thought I saw a hand wave above the shoulder there. If you don't mind stating your name and address for the record, that would be great, and you're welcome to have a seat there.
Sure. My name is Karen Wallace, and my address is 8383 158th Avenue Northeast, number 280, Redmond, Washington, 98052.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I've been working with Gina. We've been going back and forth with the comments. We added some landscaping where we had some stripings. That landscape island at the north there is new, and that was required for the end of the parking spaces. We have gone back and forth a little bit on some of the landscaping, determining where we could, locate trees to best help with the visibility of the restaurant. But there hasn't, really, I was going back through the history on this. There hasn't been a lot of changes. It just kind of fits perfectly exactly where it's at, and it meets all the code requirements. And so there wasn't a lot of changes because it just kind of fits perfect where it's at. We did change the pedestrian path a little bit based on some grades, so it's a little bit longer to connect to the right-of-way than it was before. But I can't really think of anything else. I would be curious about where we need to do any landscaping changes, because I know the client's been very concerned about tree placement, so I would just want to make sure that if we add that as a condition, that we're clear on what that is.
Where that's located. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, and thanks for being present this evening as well. Do you have an idea of where the discussions have led around the evergreen?
I do not. I would recommend, they would have to clarify. Check with Gina. I'm not sure which. I just noticed as I was going through her notes that it did say to buffer the parking, additional evergreen should be added. So I'm not sure where the exact location of that is. I'm sorry.
In the spirit of perhaps moving things forward tonight, if we were to, I'm not suggesting this to the members of the commission, but if I were to propose language, it might read something as a mutually agreeable location. Is that okay?
That would be perfect.
Okay. Okay. Anything else you'd like to add, ma'am, this evening to the presentation?
No, just that it's been great working with your staff. Gina's been very helpful. And we've gotten really far with the civil. So we know that, everything's going to work once we get to the next step. So we've got that really fleshed out.
Okay, excellent. Thanks again for being here this evening. We'll now open it up to members of the commission for questions. Commissioner Hill.
Go back to the picture that shows how to get into that portion of where the businesses are going to be. Is it going to be the road that takes you directly to Home Depot?
So, yeah, let's see if there's a better, I think this might be the best image, I'm not sure. I wish we had a more zoomed out one, or maybe we could go to the city map, but yeah, the main access would be on the west side here.
Okay. So opening up to all that development going.
Yeah, so over kind of where Home Depot is and
Right,
all of
right,
that
right.
stuff, that
Okay.
Development's going on.
Thank you. That's all I had, Chair.
Thanks, Commissioner Hill. Great question. Commissioner Kilgore.
Since this is an administrative process, I'd just like to always ask, is the applicant willing to comply with all the conditions in the staff report?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. And thank you for a very clean application. I did see that one can comply, and we already addressed it, so it's terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. Any additional questions or comments from members of the commission? Hearing none, I'm happy to entertain a motion.
Okay, so I move that the Planning Commission recommends approval of this to the City Council of the proposed Jack in the Box site plan located at 1303 North Redwood Road with the findings and conditions in the staff report, in addition to a condition that evergreens should be added at a mutually agreeable location.
Well done, Commissioner Wilden. Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Kilgore. Do we have any additional discussion on the matter? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Thanks again for being here this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on to item number 2 under our business items. This is approval of the minutes from April 25th, 2024. Now is the time to have any additions or questions regarding the minutes. If there are none, I would be happy to entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Hill. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
A second from Commissioner Sprosty Burns. Any additional discussion on the matter? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We're now on to our reports portion of the agenda. Now it's time for any additional commissioners' comments. Any members of the commission like to make comments at this time? Commissioner Kilgore.
Just want to bring this letter that we were given. If I don't know if there's a way to make some time for it at another meeting, or if it should be an item that we should discuss regarding some of the comments that were brought up. I'm not sure what the best way to do that is, but just wondering if we could at least address it, because it's nicely written and has a lot of well, it's a bibliography, but a lot of notes attached to it. So I think it's worth at least looking at. And maybe if anything, just saying that, yeah, we do have plans. We do have the traffic, traffic plans, master plan and such. And so these issues can and will be addressed. Even if it's something simple like that, I think it'd be great for all of us, for our conscience to look at.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. I probably did a poor job of that at the start of the meeting when we recognized the comments that had come in, and I think those are reasonable action items. Tip, if you don't mind kind of taking that back and having you and Sarah discuss, and even if we were to possibly bring in the engineering department just for a brief presentation around, the sound, the noise associated with traffic levels, and see where we might have some dialogue with UDOT, seeing that is the road that they own. Thanks, Commissioner Kilgore, for framing that in a much better way than I did at the start of the meeting. Any other additional comments from members of the commission? I just want to say thanks again to staff for the great presentations this evening, for how prepared everyone was, and for the applications that came in. It's very clear that there's a lot of work that is done on the front side of these to have them come up to us as they are. and the ability that we have to review them. So thank you, everyone that was involved this evening in preparing those and getting that ready for all of us. We'll move to Director's report.
Yeah, so on behalf of Sarah, I have a couple of items for you all today. The first is a report on the City Council meeting from May 7th. All three of the items that the Planning Commission recommended and forwarded to the council were approved. So that was the Raising Cane Site Plan, Connectivity Standards Code Amendment, and the South Fire Station Site Plan Amendment. So those were all approved. And then for our next meeting on May 30th, we will have our Open and Public Meetings Act training at the end of the meeting. So I just wanted to note that at that time, we'll move to the conference room, have refreshments, and have some space for Q&A. So if there's also any questions you've been wanting to ask about being on Planning Commission, about our code, or anything related to your post as a Planning Commissioner, please bring those questions to that meeting. And that's all that I had from the director.
Thanks. You ready for that? Rulon, are you going to be doing that for us? Because that, as Fred set a really high bar. So good luck.
He's talking about
Yeah. All right, thank you. Yeah, we look forward to that. It's important to have those training sessions. I'll remind everyone that that's actually a good note, Don, is we are responsible for training on our own as well, and we're about almost halfway through the year, and so it's a good opportunity to take advantage of training as members of the commission. Otherwise, we have no need to enter into a closed session this evening, correct? Excellent. We are adjourned.